Happy Halloween. I've got a little bit of green light there. That's basically my contribution to the festive atmosphere. If somebody brings me a costume, I'll wear it. But thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching live or you're watching sometime later. I want to talk today about content velocity. What do I mean by content velocity? I mean a couple things. One is how much content you are producing and on what cadence. And I also mean how quickly you can produce a piece of content. As you can imagine, both of these things are pretty closely related. Content velocity and perhaps marketing velocity in general is a pretty important part of success. So I want to show you a couple of graphs here. Let's see if this will work. Okay. So I'm going to show you our content report in the Aircule app. And this is a thing that we measure. And let's do that. And we will share our screen. And we'll share that. Okay. So, and actually, let's switch over for 1 second. I'm going to share this instead. This looks crazy. Okay. There we go. Cool. And then I will add this to the stage so that y'all can see it. So this is a graph of getting more impressions and also getting more clicks and more LLM visibility. And then if I scroll down a little bit, this is the topic publishing cadence that it is associated with. So many posts on similar topics. Super important for making sure that we actually drive clicks and we drive impressions is that amount, and making the investment in content and making the investment in velocity is part of what gets you results around content. So that's number one. Number two is I will share this other tab. Let's remove this one and we'll add this instead, which is this data that's come out from Ahrefs, but a lot of other people say exactly the same thing, which is that if you care about LLM search tends to show the most recently updated stuff. The other thing I'll show you is if I just Google content velocity right now, you'll see on a bunch of these results, Google is showing when these things were actually published. Now, you may or may not want to pay a lot of attention to those dates, but it is something that people look at when they look at your search results. And so taking a long time to update things, keep them refreshed, et cetera, can have a negative impact on whether people are clicking through in the first place. So the first thing I showed you was, here's a graph from the Aircule app of faster content velocity, and you see exactly when we start to publish more is exactly when we see more results, and that's not too surprising. Number two is this article from Ahrefs talking about more recent posts tending to be more cited in AI. Number three is you can see the dates here. Number four is if something new comes up, something interesting, something exciting, you need to be able to publish fast around it, especially today. We all know that stuff that is really interesting, folks are going to be able to publish about that right away. And we want to be able to grab those top spots before other people do. So content velocity has all kinds of benefits. And then there's another set of benefits that I'm going to talk about quickly, but I don't have any data or anything empirical to show you, which is moving quickly on content implies that you're building a bunch of systems. And implying that you're building systems means that you have a functioning content machine that if you're good at publishing things fast, it generally means that you've also got a good process in place. And what I'm talking about is strategic content here rather than sort of publishing things at random. So content velocity in general is good. Low cycle times in general are good. And I showed you some graphs and some stats that people are seeing. And so the things I want to talk about today are, number one is how would you measure your content velocity? And then number two is what are some of the main blockers that we see to content velocity and how do you actually deal with that? So in terms of measuring, the way that we usually think about content velocity is there's a graph like the one I just showed you from the Aircule app where you see a bar chart and we're literally saying like, okay, here's how often we published blog posts about whatever it is. And then there's also more in-depth analysis you can do that also you can DIY. So I'm going to share my screen right here and show you a couple of examples of that. So here is one where we take our topics and we've got a spreadsheet, and you can pull all of your post dates from your CMS, export them to a spreadsheet, and then kind of graph, like on each day, did we publish anything? In this particular example, the gray ones are any publishing, and the colored ones are things about specific topics. And that's a really important thing that I want to come back to in a minute, because when you hear me talk about content velocity, you might think I'm saying publish anything, just publish anything all the time. And it's really important to note that that's not what I'm saying, that there's an extra layer here, which is critical to making that work and to getting some of the graphs that I showed you. So here's a topical publishing graph. Here is another topical publishing graph. You can see again the power of this, and to kind of visualize, oh, actually, we are publishing every single day. That is these little gray lines. Each one of them is a single blog post, but then the colored lines are actual topical strategic ones where we're not publishing so frequently on those. So this is a way you can pull this. You can export that data from Webflow or whatever you're using as your CMS and pull it into Google Sheets and create a graph. The Aircule app will also do this for you automatically. So in the thing that I showed you a second ago, which I'll pull up here, 1 second. Let's just get that shared. Okay. All right, and then we'll move over to this tab. So this is something the Aircule app will pull for you automatically, but you can do it yourself. But the point is to look at how often are we publishing. And then there's this extra part, which is the strategy part. So one thing I didn't mention about this is that this page is showing you topic publishing cadence. And that's the other key part of content velocity, is actually making sure that you're publishing strategically on topics that you really care about. And you're not just publishing at random, but you're publishing frequently on those. And that's how you get a graph like this, where you start to see the numbers go up as soon as we start publishing. And if I kind of were to scroll through here and show you some of the individual things that got posted, you would see that there's some blog posts, there's some case studies, there are other things like that. But on this particular topic, these numbers start to go up when we start to publish on this topic more. And that is also where you're going to see growth, is by looking at specific topics and publishing strategically for those. So we talked about why content velocity is important. There are a bunch of reasons. I don't think anybody disagrees. There's a cycle time piece, which is just getting stuff out the door and learning as quickly as possible. And then there's another part, which is the volume of content that you're creating. And both of those are important and critical even, but you have to also tie it to a specific topic. So how do you actually get to more velocity? Like I showed you these graphs, I showed you how to measure it. You can use the Aircule app, which will pull it for you automatically when you define topics, or you can set it up yourself, DIY it, use some of those graphs that I showed you, pull it from Webflow or whatever you're using. And that's how you measure it. It's the number of times that you post on strategic topics. And you should look at your overall publishing schedule, but the only thing we care about is strategic topics. But what are the key blockers to actually getting to a more sort of faster content velocity and getting to lower cycle times as well? So one of them that I'll come back to is, again, strategy. If you have a set of topics that everybody agrees on, then it's a lot easier to propose ideas and look at those numbers and say, here's what we want to look at. And let me see if I can bring up for you really quickly, like how we would think about topic strategy. And if you have a list that looks anything like this, then that's great. Like that works, just as long as you're limited to a fixed set of topics. So let's get this one open. And I can show you what that looks like. Okay. All right, so for example, here's a set where you see that we've got a limited set of topics, and maybe we're looking at competitors and doing all that stuff too. But this set is 10 or 15 topics that we actually care about. And really what we want is more like 5 or 10. But this is a really important part of building that velocity, is that you're saying, hey, here are the things that we actually care about. So when somebody else comes to you and said, we should publish a post on this other thing, that's fine. But the expectations there are not, okay, this is going to contribute in the way that we want it to. And if I go back to this view in the Aircule app, again, this is all stuff that's related to one topic. So that's really important in terms of getting velocity, is agreeing on what your topic strategy is and the things that you want to publish on. The other thing that we see is really important for clients is figuring out what topics are truly sensitive for us and which ones aren't. It's a really common problem, especially for the clients that we work with who tend to be a little bit more technical, that people in the company will block publication of certain things because it's not exactly on message, or because of very specific details, or because there's just a fear of talking about certain things. So competitive is a very frequent area that gets blocked because of people being worried about what we're going to say about competitors. And that's all really reasonable. But if I go back to those graphs that I showed you, the way to get the performance that you want from your content is to be able to publish on a frequent cadence on your strategic topics. And so as a company, you'll have to figure out how to align in order to sort of be able to quickly move things through approval processes. There are a few strategies that we see work for this. One really common one is just to look at that topic strategy together and decide what things are not as sensitive and pick those topics and try those to sort of build some momentum. So that's an important one. Another strategy that works pretty well is not necessarily, taking certain topics out of the running, but publishing with less approval for certain funnel stages or certain aspects of the topic. So an introductory post might require a different level of scrutiny, or something that's adding an FAQ, answering a frequently asked question, might require a little bit less scrutiny because it doesn't require a lot of very, specifics about exactly how we need to position ourselves, how we need to talk about ourselves. Like, the words don't have to be exactly right. The other thing that can be really helpful is repurposing already approved content. And this is where AI can help. So I'm not going to go into AI workflows on this particular live stream, but having parts of your system where you are going through and saying, hey, we just did a webinar. Here are 5 things that we can use in LLM to get out of this webinar in terms of what we can say based on the content that was shared. Or even better, here's a white paper that all of the approvals already went into, that somebody thought a lot about. Great, let's pull out the pieces of this and, explore different aspects, mix things in different ways, answer different questions, add different data, and publish all those things. So those can all be ways that you can increase that velocity, even when, there are approvals that required or people are a little bit nervous about that. So we started by talking about what content velocity is, why it's important. I'm sure you've noticed this as well, but all the graphs that we have, all the data we have, suggest that publishing on a regular cadence on strategic topics in a consistent way is really important for performance. It's also really helpful in terms of efficiency. And how do you get to that? One key part of that is alignment and getting your topic strategy together and getting people to agree. And another one is picking and choosing what topics require what levels of approval, and then kind of trying to move fast where you possibly can. AI is certainly a part of this, and it's something that you can use kind of judiciously to build that system so that you can go pretty fast. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say, but the last question we sometimes get is, how often do I need to publish? And I would say for a lot of companies, especially if you're Series A, Series B, 1 time per week on a strategic topic is a great place to start. As you get bigger, you're going to want to publish more. We have clients who are even at that stage who publish much more frequently than that because they've got things dialed in as far as what their topic strategy is, and because they're applying the right level of scrutiny. We have some clients who can go from an idea to a completed blog post in 24 hours. That can happen too for you. So those are all things that you should be thinking about. And the more you do this, the more efficient it gets, the less resources you actually have to commit to it. But it's about getting these systems in place so that you can achieve shorter cycle times and higher overall strategic velocity. So that's how to think about content velocity. Those are some ways to measure it and some ways to improve it. And yeah, let me know what questions you have. And thanks for watching. All right, see you.